everyone, I'm Sonic, SonicX98, bringing you the latest on video games, TV news, and more. Today we are back with another Robots in Disguise Season 2 episode review. This time we are going to be reviewing Episode 3, Metal Meltdown. Now, after the sort of rocky finish with Overloaded Part 2 last week, Metal Meltdown definitely picks up momentum again. It's definitely, I think, currently the best episode of Season 2. This episode barely had any bad moments. This was just a fun, action-packed episode. I feel like that leaves a great setup for the rest of the season. So we're gonna go through this episode and analyzing the pros and cons of this episode. So last week, I guessed at the end of my Overloaded Part 2 video that every episode following it was going to focus on either Optimus' team or Bumblebee's team until the two teams eventually reunited. So apparently I was right. This episode focuses on Bumblebee's team. We get no scenes involving Optimus' team. So the main plot of this episode basically revolves around Strongarm and Grimlock trying to become more of a cohesive partners, because Strongarm's never been really working with Grimlock. She's always had Sideswipe as her partner, but now that Sideswipe's gone with Optimus' team back in Overloaded Part 1, she needs to teach Grimlock how to be like Sideswipe. Though this basically shows the point that you can't really make someone they're not. So I like that dynamic that Grimlock's not supposed to be how the fat stealthy guy Sideswipe was. So, but eventually Strongarm and Grimlock learn to work together by the end, and I think this is a nice episode to build their relationship, seeing as how we barely got to see the two of them interact back in Season 1. So hopefully we'll get more moments like this in the future. Now we're going to talk about the new main Decepticon that was introduced in this episode, and that is Saberhorn. Now Saberhorn is definitely my favorite Decepticon right now. I find him to be much more better than Overload was, because while Overload seems to be more full of himself, but he really is, Saberhorn is actually charismatic like Overload, but he's actually more an actual threat. We see him be Saberhorn is more of a skill-based fighter rather than a brute force. We see him take on Bumblebee in halfway through this episode in a sword battle, where he actually handles him pretty well. He's able to defeat him due to the fact that Strongarm and Grimlock are out, so he can pretty much take Bumblebee out by himself. This goes later on into towards the end of the episode when they fight Metal Plans, when Saberhorn once again defeats Bumblebee. So I think it's nice to finally see a competent Decepticon that can actually hold his own. Saberhorn is played by Fred Tatasciore, so for people, notable roles players include Saren in the Mass Effect series, Nikolai in the Call of Duty Zombie series, and so on. So, like I said, Saberhorn, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of him. His only flaw, though, appears to be that he cannot handle brute force people like Grimlock. The only reason he was able to beat Grimlock earlier on in this episode was because he was still not working properly with Strongarm, but apparently he's good on one-on-one fights, but his weakness is taking on more than one enemy. But I like that Saberhorn's got an interesting personality, so I can't wait to see more of him. Now, there weren't really any bad parts about this episode, but if I had to say one bad thing, it's how this episode handled Russell. So, in the beginning of this episode, we see that Russell's trying to taking up his dad, and that he's collecting various mementos from each of their missions together. He has a piece of fracture from when he took over to space back in the hunting season episode of Season 1, and so he's basically trying to find something to bring back from this mission. So when he and Denny go out, Bumblebee's team is trying to stop Saberhorn from getting more of this metal called thermatanium, which is apparently a really useful metal on Cybertron. So during the battle, Russell sees a little loose piece of thermatanium or something, and he decides to go get it right in the middle of Saberhorn and Bumblebee's fight. And now I understand Russell's his kid and all, but we've never seen Russell act this stupid. Literally, he just pulled if Miko was from Transformers Prime was in this, I feel like that's something she would do. We know Russell's smart and he's never done anything stupid, so I feel like they just threw that in though to find make conflict and to make the episode more interesting. But I feel like they could have figured that out. Maybe just have Saberhorn defeat Bumblebee and then just have Strongarm and Grimlock forced to work together to bring him down. But anyway, it's not really such a bad thing. While it was annoying, and fucking nail-biting to watch. Like, Russell, what are you doing? But it was fine. Besides, that's the only like real main gripe I had this episode. Now, while this episode was great, my favorite part of this episode would have to be the end, the stinger ending. So, in the beginning of this episode, it actually starts off with Kickback. So, now, if you remember from Season 1, Kickback was the Decepticon that Steeljaw and his gang used to sneak into the scrapyard back in episode 21, Lockout. So, Steeljaw finds him, Kickback's trying to get away from him because of what he did to him back in Season 1. Steeljaw lies, saying that Megatronus forced him to do that, and so he wants to work with him again. But then Kickback rejects him and says that he's got his own gang now. So now, fast forward to the end, we find out that Saberhorn, for some reason, he was on the Alchemore, yet his database is not on there. So we still don't know how he got himself out of the database. After that, we go back to Kickback, who's now entered the space what looks like to be either another Decepticon prison ship or either the second half of the Alchemore. So, but Steeljaw's following him. So, when we get into the end, we see that this gang has a ton of Decepticons. Now, what I found really interesting about this is that many of the Decepticons, if you were a big fan of Transformers Prime, are straight out of that. We have a blue Insecticon that looked very similar to Hardshell. We have blue and yellow Viacons, and probably the one any fan of Transformers Prime will recognize, an orange and blue Arachnid. So, we're not sure if this is the Arachnid from Transformers Prime, or maybe just Hasbro being lazy with the models, but it's something. So apparently in this episode we finally learn who the leader of this group is, and her name is Glowstrike. Now, Glowstrike, like as stated in my New York Toy Fair trailer analysis, she is played by Greg Griffin, known for her roles as Azula in the Avatar series, Eligard in Minecraft Story Mode, and Jean in the Bayonetta series. And her right-hand man appears to be this series version of Scorponok. Now, Scorponok, you know, is the Decepticon that turned into a scorpion. And if you were a big fan of the Transformers movies, he was Blackout's drone in the deserts sections. So apparently, Glowstrike is becoming, and Scorponok are becoming infuriated by how Kickback and Saberhorn were unable to do their task, and then it ends with Steeljaw sneaking into the base and proposing to make an alliance with Glowstrike and Scorponok. So I cannot wait to see where the plot goes from there, but it was this stinger ending that seems to be building up Steeljaw's new army that I cannot wait to see more of. So that's my review of Transformers Robots in the Sky Season 2, Episode 3, Metal Meltdown. This is definitely, I think, the best episode of Season 2 so far. That's a lot better than Overload Part 1 was. I would have to give this episode a 9.5 out of 10. This episode was almost perfect had it not been for Russell acting like a complete idiot and out of character. Regardless of that, it was great. I'll be back with Episode 4, Suspended, when it comes out later this weekend. If you like this review, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later.